Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for Athletics Australia's celebration of NAIDOC Week. This week we'll be sharing the stories of some of our proud Indigenous athletes. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all gather today, and pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people watching from home. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Olympic hurdler Kyle Vander-Kuyp of the Worimi and Yuin tribe, who will speak today about his rise in athletics and the surprise discovery of his Aboriginality. Kyle, welcome.
G'day Sean, how are you? Nice to join you today. Yeah, NAIDOC Week, it's an important week to really celebrate who we are as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and for me, it's always a great week to celebrate and look back, reflect. It's normally consists of functions, flag raisings. There's normally in Melbourne a march through the city. So with a lot of the staff I've had in various jobs, we've got managers out of the office, got directors out of the office, and just walked along the streets in solidarity, and really it's been a great eye-opener for them just to really meet an Indigenous person for the first time possibly, but just see how proud and how connected Aboriginal people are. We are a real tight-knit community, and NAIDOC Week really gives us a chance to get together in a positive way, celebrate who we are. And me, for athletics, for my athletic career, I spent 15 years going to Europe in June, July, August, so I never got to celebrate NAIDOC. So I've sort of had to make up for it in my post-career, and I've had so many great memories over the years. NAIDOC balls are probably one of the special moments. Blackfellas love to dress up, so NAIDOC balls are a great chance to wear the bow tie and really get yourself flashed up, and people just get on the dance floor and celebrate. There's awards. People are recognised for all their contributions. I've had NAIDOC awards in the past, so it's a great week to celebrate and also bring Australians along the journey to understand a little bit more about the culture. So. For me, to be a proud Aboriginal man, it means a lot to me, and even just to say the words, I'm a proud Worimi and Yuin man, as you introduced me, that's something that really means a lot to me. It's close to my heart, and probably for most of my life I didn't actually know where I was connected into. I've always been proud to be Aboriginal, and in the early days I had to sort of try and grow in that self-esteem and that understanding what does it mean to be Aboriginal, what is Aboriginality all about. And I was lucky enough to meet great elders when I was younger to say, Kyle, don't worry about knowing all the facts. You'll feel it in your heart. You'll go along with that feeling in your heart, and you'll know when it's right one day, and you'll connect. And so when I've met all my family, it's and I've heard the stories, and I've heard how strong my tribes are. It's something that it really means a lot to me. Yeah, for me, I've got great memories of how athletics started for me. It was basically in little athletics and at primary school where friends were doing little athletics, and the word came up in the schoolyard, and I went home to mum pretty excited and trying to pronounce this word, little athletics, and nudging mum to say, please, can I go down? And mum supported me to go, and it was a Saturday morning. I probably got a little bit overwhelmed and ran straight back to the car when I seen that it was hundreds and hundreds of kids running around. But as I got the confidence and came back and tried some events out, it was great beginnings. Ringwood Little Athletics Club was where I competed and raced every Saturday. I tried every event out. I did the walks. Got disqualified in the walk. I couldn't do it. Did the shot put, discus. Couldn't do Fosbury flop over the high jump. Did the scissors and just fell in love with athletics. And being a skinny, shy kid, it was probably the hurdles that jumped out as an event that I found a passion in, and I love the technical side of it, and that's where it all began. And by the time I reached grade 5, grade 6 in primary school, I was representing the school at the state champs and got a couple of little medals, a bronze medal in grade 5 and a gold in grade 6. And yeah, they're probably two of the most important medals out of my whole career. You know, put Olympic final aside, and national titles and state titles, those two primary school medals really, I suppose, gave me that permission to be successful, and I gave myself that confidence boost that you know, to be Aboriginal, it's something that you should be proud of, and why don't you use it in sport? So yeah, I was only young, but that's where it really all began. Yeah, being adopted, you know, I was adopted at 5 weeks of age, so you know, I'm so lucky that, you know, I was brought into two loving parents that just, you know, really couldn't have their own kids and decided to adopt me and my sister. And the way that they just raised me and my sister and mum, you know, mum particularly, just put so much love and support into me. And you know, those early days when sport came along and mum needed to raise money, or, you know, get me a lift to go down to Little Ass, or, you know, when interstate trips started to happen, she started to ring around and just yeah, raise money. And most people have got fond memories of my mum just pestering them and ringing them up. And even the Aboriginal community, they probably reflect back now and say, geez, we you know, we had a lot of phone calls from your mum, and she didn't hold back. She just jumped on the front foot, and it was all just to get me somewhere. She wanted to, you know, make sure that this thing that I was passionate about could reach its full potential. And yeah, being adopted was also a journey to try and, you know, gain that self-esteem and confidence. So I was always raised to know that I was Aboriginal, and mum never held that back from me. And yeah, you stand out, you're different at school, you get a bit of name calling, you get called Abbo and Black Kid and Boong, and that was a hard time. You know, I was sort of ending up crying at home saying, Mum, what is this skin colour? It's causing me grief at school. And yeah, Mum just sat with me and worked through all that time, and we cried together, we set goals together, and, you know, so the track was a real way to get confidence, get self-esteem, you know, let alone the big dreams that I set to make Olympics and, you know, be the best. I really needed sport to get confidence. I needed self-esteem, and those early days were so important to have sport as a vehicle. Yeah, well, before I actually met my biological family, which was actually in my 30s. So 2004, I met my biological mum for the first time, and she'd rang me out of the blue in 1999, and she even rocked up to Sydney Olympics, but I didn't get to meet her there. I was sort of in the zone and focused, and actually Carol Grant came up to me after my semi-final, and Carol was in tears, and she said, Kyle, I've met your mum, and she wanted to meet you desperately before the semi-final. And I said, oh no, that wouldn't have happened, Carol, because I just had the focus on. But Carol was in tears because she just said, Kyle, my God, she's just spitting image of you. And so that was a nice moment, but I had to reassure Carol, you did the right thing. Don't worry. Yeah, that sort of emotion, you know, is very hard to bring into the Olympic space. But yeah, when I met my family and we connected, and I've got aunties and uncles and cousins, nephews, like a huge mob. And yeah, to find out that my first cousins are the Yeller brothers that played for Australia for the Wallabies. My grandfather, my grandmother, they were both very athletic. And I was even asking my mum on the phone, like, I've got these calf muscles, where did they come from? And she said, don't worry, we've all got them. So when I had the first barbecue with the family, I was They probably thought, this guy's looking at everyone's big toes and eyebrows and nose. I just needed to know where I came from and where my body parts come from, and I was really so proud, so put at ease, put at peace when I met my family. But before that, I had the opportunity, and again through athletics, I went around the whole country. I had a lot of mentoring roles, role model work, ambassador roles. So I was going to remote communities. I was visiting, Aboriginal kids and doing clinics. And a lot of kids would say to me, who's your mob? And it's quite typical of an Aboriginal person not to ask about your job or what school you went to. They'll ask, who's your mob? Are you married up? Have you got a missus? And for me, I was looking at these kids and I said, well, no, I don't have a missus, I don't have kids. And then I didn't even know my mob. So they were looking a bit puzzled at this guy that, was giving them a clinic. I had the best sports gear on, I looked fit, I was strong, I was proud. But those kids, they just said, well, geez, you don't know your mob, you don't know where you are, and you don't know, and I actually envied those kids. They were in bare feet. They probably had, there was poverty in the community. There was, health problems. But I looked at those kids and I envied what they had. They had connection. They had a sense of belonging. They knew that tree there. This is our sacred ground. This is my auntie. This is my family. So. Until you really get connected, it's you probably feel a little bit lost. And for me, that's why NAIDOC Week's so important. It's for me to think back and also connect into how rich our history is. For me, it's not just my aunties and uncles. I look back and think, geez, I've got ancestors that have been on this country for thousands of years, and if I can't draw strength from that, and if I can't look ahead positively and move forward and take on more opportunities, something wrong, because you should be proud of a ancestry that long, and that's something that I'm very proud of. Sports played a major part, and it's not only just given me so many opportunities, it's helped me grow as a person. I always say to young people, look, I'm not a very confident person, I'm not a very assertive person, and sport taught me how to use all those tools like that. You have to be assertive, you have to be confident, you have to know what you want. So a lot of people meet me and they're probably remembering the athlete that I was, that just probably had a game day face on when I was racing over the hurdles. But I'm so much not like that person. I'm very pretty private, pretty quiet, not an extrovert. But geez, I love doing sport because it got me out of that comfort zone, and I was very assertive. I was aggressive. I was confident. But I really had to work on it, and that's probably the one thing I miss about sport, because it gave me so many great disciplines. It taught me how to set great goals, how to get through obstacles, setbacks, disappointments, and they're all great skills to have. They're things that I want my kids to have. I don't necessarily want them to be elite athletes unless they choose to, but sport gave me so much, and I'm grateful for what it did for me. It's something that I miss. I'm now probably weighted to my late 40s to now start to go, well, how can I make tracks back towards the track? How do I get involved? How can I get some of this knowledge that's in my head passed on? Because you don't want to be wasted. You want to pass on and get the next next young hurdler, next young sprinter, next young Indigenous athlete out there. And I had great role models to look up to. And if I think back to primary school, high school, Lionel Rose was doing great things. Yvonne Goolagong was out there, And because I identified with their colour and their Aboriginality, I thought, well, if they're doing great things, why can't I? And then Carl Lewis was on my school folder. Edwin Moses was on my school folder at school. I had little cutouts of them from magazines, and I just dreamed. I just dreamed, like, geez, how do I be like these guys? Will I ever get to a level where I could race against these guys? And it's weird how your career ends up, where you end up, racing next to Colin Jackson, in finals with Colin Jackson, meeting Carl Lewis, and him shaking your hand, but not as a stranger. He knows who you are because you've warmed up on the same Olympic track with him. Michael Johnson, knows your first name, and you just pinch yourself. You go, oh my God, should I tell them that they're on my school folder? Should I tell them that I looked up to them? But that's probably the role I love having now, is that I just want to continue being positive. If I've helped influence someone, or if I've helped give someone some hope, or if I've helped a young kid go, wow, he's done it, I want to do something. That's what keeps me motivated to try and be that good example for people. I think when you realise there's only been 52 Indigenous Olympians, and I sit somewhere in the middle there, and you really look back on the history and probably wonder what it was like for some of our first Olympians. I just contacted one of our boxers the other day, and he didn't have many images of his fight. He I don't know what his team experience was like, but it's I really celebrate that moment, because at the time you think, I'll go to 3 or 4 Olympics, and when it all pans out, and I got to 2 and just missed a couple of teams, and it's they're just special moments, and I've enjoyed 20 plus years of sharing my story. I don't know how many times I've got up and shared that Olympic race story with people, and I'll talk about walking out of the tunnel. I'll talk about hearing my mum scream. I'll talk about, being in 81 kilo shape, and, 23 mil skin fold, and not having chocolate for 2 years. And I love sharing the story, but not to boast, but just to bring people into that moment, because you worked a lifetime to get there. For me, it was a crazy dream that a 10-year-old had, walking home from school. I said to Mum, geez, I want to wear green and gold. I want to run at the Olympics one day. And Mum said, all right, well, we better work out how you're going to do it. And then, that was 10-year-old. And then I met my coach, Roy, at 15. And then, me and Roy went to Atlanta, and we, became Olympic finalists, and more importantly, became an Olympian. And that's at the age of 25. So 15 years for that dream to come true. I had to correct someone the other day that had me written up as former Olympian. I said, the profile looks good, but just take former out, because we're always encouraged to say Olympian, and I'm not someone who's got degrees, or I don't have an OAM or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, I need to get that. That's my title, Olympian. But it means a lot to me, and it's special to be in a great group of Indigenous Olympians, and it's great to see that we're getting recognised now. The Olympic Committee have definitely recognised the Indigenous Olympians, and there's a great plaque up in Sydney at the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence. They've got a beautiful glass plaque up on the wall which has got all of our names, and I know that the Olympic Committee now are putting together some a bit of a video package to try and celebrate all that diversity that we have, and I'm on a committee as well at the moment, Indigenous Advisory Committee with the Olympic Committee, and Yeah, I think most of us we're just saying celebrate our long involvement, celebrate our long history. Yeah, this year's theme it's fantastic theme, and every year they have a different theme for NAIDOC, but always was, always will be. It's probably a great year to really acknowledge that this land that we all live on, and we all enjoy how great Australia is. But for me, it's just as important to always remember that Indigenous people have been on this continent for over 60,000 years, and I'm not a historian, but I've got a real thirst for trying to learn more about that history, and keep it alive as well. I think that's also a part of NAIDOC, is to keep our traditions alive, our language. I buy a lot of art. I collect a lot of artifacts, and it might seem like my house is a little bit of a museum, but I'm just so proud. Everything I collect, it's very personal to me, and it reminds me of my identity. It reminds me of my connection. I don't get out on the country enough, so I'm looking forward to try and set a program up which can take people onto country, and that's school groups and corporate groups, and I'm writing the talks now with some good friends about setting it up, and do it respectfully, do it in coordination or in partnership with communities, so traditional elders, so they can celebrate who they are, their land, their traditions, their stories, and I want to bring all Australians into that space. I spent 15 years going to Europe, and I love travelling through all the history of Europe, go down a cobblestone road that was 500 years old, but I want Australians to celebrate, this cave, this is 65,000 years old, and these people, this language, this is not just a 100-year-old language, this is thousands of years old, and celebrate that survival, celebrate that continuing living culture. So when you hear always was, always will be, it's not a protest, and it's not a political statement. It's just to remind people that Indigenous people have been here. We're still here. We're proud. We're connected. The land means a lot to us. I think, go and ask an Indigenous person this week. What does it mean to you, and you'll get a different answer.